Hi, this is Ed Tracy with OCTracy.com TV Live, and I'm here with State Representative Tom Kirby. Tom has been running perpetually here for the year of 2012, and finally now his victory in the Republican primary has ensured that he won't have to run until 2000 and, well, it starts earlier, but 2014.
Right.
And I bet you're happy to have the rest that you're going to have.
Yeah, I've told a lot of people after 3 months, I think 2 years is going to seem like an eternity between elections. But,
I think you wore out your wife and family, and have they gone to Hawaii yet for all the rest?
No, but I tell you, my middle one, she was anxious to get back to Valdosta State. I can tell you that after the summer.
Well, we're just going to take a little break as I just welcome Representative Kirby, and he was from the Loganville, which represented Loganville and Grayson, and Loganville and Grayson of District 107 is the district that now the election that just happened in the primary, and you have no opposition on the Democratic side, so you're the representative-elect for the new District 114. Which will start in January, and that district includes parts of Rockdale, Walton, Bartow, and Gwinnett. So you went from a nice little succinct district in Loganville and Grayson to now representing parts of 4 counties. So,
but in Loganville and Grayson, with the growth they've seen in the last 10 years, there was almost 90,000 people in District 107.
Wow.
And so the new numbers being 50,300 for all the districts. So the geography might have changed a little bit, but the number of people went down significantly. So
okay. Well, that's good. Did we add any state representatives with the growth population that we had?
We don't add, but they redrew all the lines. There are some places where population changed and 2 districts were consolidated.
I see.
105 is the new district that's north side of Grayson. Probably 80% of that district came out of the old 107. That was a brand new unseated one that Joyce Chandler won the Republican primary, and I forget the Democrat that won. There was actually 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans vying for that seat.
And I think 92 here in Rockdale ended up with no incumbent, even though 92 was already here. The new lines drew where we had no incumbent in the district, so there's actually a runoff tomorrow, which is August 21st,
right.
And for that, and it's only Democrats running in that race. And so, just a word about our sponsors, and I want to let you know about Rick Mulchus, who is an insurance agent with Guide 1 Insurance, and he's located here in Conyers on Route 138 in the Bank of America building. Rick's a Vietnam vet and married to Brenda for 37 years and has 2 grown children and 4 grandchildren, and he's vested in this community, lived in Conyers for 25 years, and he's been in the insurance business for 27 years and owned his own insurance agency for 20 years. Rick's a good dear friend of mine and a member of First Baptist Conyers, and also a Gideon. And Rick is just a great guy. Give Rick a call. You'll see his little banner ad on this video as well, or on EdwardCTracy.com. And I want to just let you know you can see interviews like this, or news stories, or public meetings that we videotape on EdwardCTracy.com. Because I know you don't have the time to go to these meetings. We'll be at a Recreation Department meeting this afternoon after this, and we'll bring that to you later in the week. And even though you don't have the time to participate in your government because you're out there working, a lot of people here live in Atlanta and come home late and they don't get a chance to attend these meetings. You can watch these in the privacy of your own home and still get all the information that you would have if you were there. And so we do not edit any of the words. We might edit out breaks that they take or things like that, but we don't edit out any of the dialogue at these meetings. Also, I want to talk to you a little bit about Your Town Shopper, which is in Rockdale County and in Newton County this coming month. And Your Town Shopper is this coupon booklet right here that really focuses in on local business. And Danny Lockhart, a friend of mine who owns Clean and Tidy Carpet Cleaners, is the owner of this. And you can, if you want to advertise in Your Town Shopper, you can call 770-929-8439 and just ask for Your Town Shopper representative, and they'd be happy to talk to you about it. Tell them that Edward C. Tracy sent you. And I want to share with you also, I joined earlier this year the Southern Barter Club, and the Southern Barter Club is a way for small business people, especially in large business, to not have to spend your hard-earned cash, but to trade with other businesses for products and services. And Southern Barter Club, or SBC as it's known, is a great organization located in Gwinnett County and serves the entire Atlanta area. Also, they have mutual agreements with barter clubs all over the United States and internationally, so you actually get to participate in barter with thousands of companies all over the place. And you can see more about them on my website at edwardctracy.com, or go to Southern Barter Club and do a Google search on that. Finally, I want to just share this with you. We have Tom Kirby here as our guest, and I want to just share something. We're talking about government and everything, and I was just reading in my Patriots Bible this weekend. We were studying in the book of Ruth at Bible study this Sunday, and Ruth 1:16 talks about how Ruth told Naomi, her mother-in-law, that she would go back to Israel with her land of origin, and to make a long story short, she told her that your God will be my God, I'll serve your God. And so what she was saying was that I care for you, I'll be there to care for you, and I believe in you so much that I'm willing to go to a foreign land and serve your God. And I didn't realize, but in the 1890s, that verse was used by our Congress in the formulation of our Pledge of Allegiance to this country, that we were having so many immigrants coming here from foreign lands that they felt that we needed a pledge that people would come here and honor our country, and the flag was the symbol used for that pledge. So they pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. And added in was One Nation Under God by Dwight D. Eisenhower in the 1950s. But Ruth 1:16 was used at that time in the 1890s, knowing that people from different faiths were coming here, but they wanted people to assimilate into the United States, and they wanted them to all worship the same God. So these are the reasons why we have things, and people don't know. We say words and don't know the meanings behind them. And it was a great thing that I learned, and I'm a amateur historian, and I love to study about our patriotism and how we came. Things just didn't appear. There was a reason for everything. And so I just wanted to share that with our audience today.
Well, along that same line, I'm sure you probably shared with before, Isaiah 33:22. That's really with a model for the three branches of government the Founding Fathers rely on, where it talks about the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive branch in a little different terms, but it still sets the model, and that's where that came from. If you read some of the other documents and information the Founding Fathers in drafting the Constitution used, they reference that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very directly that's where the concept came from. So.
That's right. And James Madison, came up with the idea originally because he was a biblical scholar, and he wanted to make sure that we aligned everything. And so many times, as you know, you're also a student of history, that all the foundations from Christopher Columbus, matter of fact, in the 1890s, they were 1892. They were celebrating Christopher Columbus's historic voyage to the Americas, not North America, but to the Americas. And when they were putting this pledge together, that was part of it. That he, and people don't know this because history has been so thwarted by the liberal left and socialists and communists who don't want us to even know and understand our own real history, and nor our faith. But Christopher Columbus' mission was to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to lands that have never heard it before. And he had no idea that these lands existed. He had a concept that there was much more beyond, and he thought basically he was going to the West Indies. And little did he know, his plan was this big, and God's plan was this big. And out of that obedience and going through what he went through, the persecution that he went through during his life, that because of that, the gospel of Jesus Christ was brought to pagan lands, to 2 whole new continents that no one knew existed. So, Tom, welcome. And today again is Monday, August the 20th, 2012, in the year of our Lord, as the Founding Fathers used to sign their signature, in the year of our Lord. So, in representing District 107, and now having to represent, starting in January, even though I know you've already started to represent your new district, 114, do you see any differences of the problems related to Grayson and Loganville versus Rockdale and Bartow County, and are there?
Not really. I think you start naming some of those towns: Loganville, Grayson, Winder, Conyers. You've seen a lot of growth in the last 10, 20 years here. New people moving in. We're all have that some type of link to Atlanta and the Atlanta economy, and also that means Atlanta traffic. So all these areas are sharing a lot of the same opportunities. And then statewide, I think, Georgia is one state that, from north to south, you look at some of our major problems. The economy and education. Those are the 2 starting places. I think that's the 2 things that we focus on. And it doesn't matter whether you're up just south of Chattanooga or down in Valdosta. The economy is going to be on somebody's mind, and then education is always prevalent. For the last 20 years, it's been a sad commentary. Too many politicians, everybody runs, they're going to do something about education. Well, we're still talking about it, and we haven't done anything. And I think,
how do we get off that dime?
Well, I think, I firmly believe if we're going to start serious discussion on education reform, we start by continuing to send a message to Washington, D.C. to abolish the Department of Education. As a failed institution that Carter created, and I don't believe he ever had the constitutional authority to do to begin with. And you look at the billions of dollars we've spent dumbing down our education, seeing our test scores lower, and our students fall farther behind students all around the world. There's no way you can say the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. has been successful. And even short of doing that, if we can't do that on our own, I think we get our superintendent, John Bards, now. He needs to be out working with all the other states. Who's doing it right? Sharing best practices. That's what the business community has done forever. Sharing those best practices, getting together, seeing what's working, what's not working. Whether it's a more of an inner city type setting like Atlanta schools or the rural setting in South Georgia, there are successful school systems all over this country that are getting the job done. Let's go find out what are they doing, what's making them right. I also believe we've dumbed down our educational standards. Even when I was in school, Mom and Dad still had some of their old textbooks, and I'm sitting there going, man, I'm glad we didn't have to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
This was, I'm looking at a high school textbook from Daddy's class of '56. Yeah. That was stuff I saw in college, and today right. I see some. When my daughter graduated from high school and said trigonometry was one of the easiest bunny classes she had, I know something's wrong. But it's, it was all about what trigonometry was learning how to program that calculator, because they got to use their programmable trigonomic calculators on all their exams. Right.
Over time, you went from having to use a slide rule to having to use a special calculator, and at one time you had the calculator, but you couldn't use it to take an exam. and now they can bring the calculators right into the exam with them.
And when they're programming, all those formulas we had to memorize for math, I mean, that's what made trig so hard, is memorizing in calculus, memorizing all those formulas. Well, now they just program them in, so it's just done by hitting buttons. So
right.
If they programmed it right, they get the right answer.
It's like looking up your number in the yellow pages.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think there's some things we can do on our education that would certainly help, and setting those standards higher. You know, I'm not one that thinks we need to put a bunch of computer classes in our elementary schools. Start with most of us my age. If we have a question about our computers, we go ask an elementary school kid anyway, because they're better at it. But, you know, get back to reading, writing, arithmetic, learning the basics, the fundamentals, setting those standards higher. You know, kids will live up to the performance levels we set for them. I fully believe that. I've seen that in too many things, no matter what type of education it is, things in the school classroom or things outside of school, sports or something.
Do you think we're trying to put too much on our kids in the way of the variety of educational things? We're introducing sex ed, we're introducing all kinds of outside influences that have nothing to do with preparing them for the next level. In other words, if reading skills are so poor as they are across this country, and we've had president and first ladies and congressmen and their wives and organizations and educators. We have more educators in this country today, 3 times as many as there were when I was growing up. And yet, at the same time, all we ever hear is, we want to throw more money, more money, more money. But why can't we teach kids how to read in kindergarten, in preschool, at home? Why aren't they coming to kindergarten prepared, already knowing how to read? Why is there no personal responsibility for parents to take that responsibility, or some punishment equal to, if your kids don't know how to read? A, if they have a disability, we understand. B, if there is no disability, that's a parental responsibility that they need to say, okay, you can't, in my opinion, you can't enter kindergarten until your kid knows how to read.
Well, I'm not sure you can legislate any parental responsibilities, but you're exactly right. You know, we had parents that were extremely involved, and we knew, you know, not only how to read, but there's some other little things like, I know in our generation, I'm sure you heard it. I guarantee you, I just met you, you know, this year, but I guarantee you heard, if you're in trouble at school, you're in trouble at home.
That's right.
And today you talk to these teachers, and if Johnny's in trouble at school, the parents down there want to know what's wrong with that teacher.
It was no bigger fear than getting in trouble at school. It wasn't about going to see the principal, although that was a fear factor. It was about the principal calling my dad.
And I never could figure out, how did that news get home before I did? You know, I didn't even get a chance to tell my version before they'd already heard another version, which may or may.
That's right. And today the parents run to school and blame the teacher
and the environment and everything else. You know, Lou Holtz, I think, said it really well when he was asked one time, what's the difference between coaching kids at the end of his career and when he started, and he said, it's real simple. When I started off, we talked about responsibility and commitment. Now it's about entitlement and rights.
Yes.
And we've got to get back to people
Thank
living
you,
up
the
to
1960s.
Live up to our responsibility. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility as parents. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility as citizens of this country to do some of the things that we need to do, and pay attention and be involved in our political system. You know, and we're going to see a lack of that tomorrow on on these runoffs. You know, the voter turnout for the runoffs. I mean, there's some places they're talking it may be as low as 6%.
Oh yeah, it's sad.
And it really is, and that's not living up to the responsibility that comes with.
It's as easy to vote as it is to run in and buy a beer in a liquor store, or to buy a loaf of bread in a variety store, whatever. It is that easy to run in and vote. And I look forward to the opportunity to vote. People don't understand their God-given right to freedom until they lose it.
Right.
And I remember during the 1980s when the Polish people were able to finally get their freedom away from communist Soviet Union. And if you meet a Polish person, immigrant today, that lived during those times under communist rule, or people from Czechoslovakia or anywhere under that Soviet regime, they worship the right to vote. They know that it's a God-given right that can be taken away. just like the most powerful person, I always ask this question, who the most powerful person in the United States is, and everybody will say, well, the president, of course, and I say, no, the police officer. Mm-hmm. Police officer is the only one that can take away your constitutional rights in about 3 seconds. Yep. And you only learn to respect the law once you've had your rights taken away sometimes. And that's what it's like to vote. We end up with the government we deserve if only 10%, 5% of the people tomorrow turn out to vote, and the person that you thought was going to win easily doesn't win, and the wrong person gets in, it's your fault because you didn't go out and vote. We have a big election in November, and
tomorrow I get the opportunity to go vote and run off in Walton County for coroner. It's the only thing on my ballot is coroner. We've got the 2 guys, Jenkins and Page. Most people probably don't even know the coroner is the only guy that can arrest the sheriff.
Well, didn't know that.
You know that, yeah.
Well,
that's the guy who's going to arrest the sheriff, and if the sheriff is something were to happen and he's no longer able to fulfill his duty, the coroner becomes the sheriff until the new sheriff is elected.
Wow.
So the coroner
Folks, I just learned something.
is got a lot more to that office than just what you think about, and of course we all grew up with whether it's Quincy or now some of the CSI things in the coroner's office and these investigations, but yeah, the coroner has got a lot more potential to be involved in some things.
Yeah, people don't like to talk about it because it's kind of a morbid conversation, and you know, it's one of those. It's okay. You know, anybody willing to stand up and become coroner, you know.
Walton also has a county commission runoff. If it wasn't for that, we were kind of laughing, but sadly, it's true. Is we were going to find out which one of those guys had a bigger family in Walton County, because that's the only people who probably would have gone out and voted. But county commission race will still bring out. You know, they're only talking maybe 500 people, but that'll be a little bit of. And there was 2,500 votes, I believe, in the first time, and then they're going to drop down from 2,500 to 500. Is what they're thinking. Wow. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your legislative goals for 2013, actually, and we had talked a little bit, and you mentioned about the Government Accountability Act, and I wasn't familiar with that because I thought we had passed legislation in the last 2 years ago, I believe it was, for zero-based budgeting.
It was last session.
It was last session, and we passed zero-based budgeting, and I thought that was the government accountability, but you're saying there's more to it.
Right. The Zero-Based Budgeting Act was passed, and Governor Deal signed that, and it's a phase-in over some time. But the Government Accountability Act, this was a bill that is going to set up legislative committees, both the House and the Senate down the Gold Dome. And these committees will be doing nothing but looking at every government agency and executive appointee, anybody that gets money from the state that we appropriate, and see what are they doing with the money. Are they still valid? Are they duplicating services? Are they have they outgrown their usefulness? And start the process of sunsetting or getting rid of some of these agencies and these appointees, or parts of them that are no longer needed and no longer serving the good of the people of the state of Georgia, and we shouldn't be spending money on. In doing so, I think it would have been a really good opportunity that we moved forward to start reducing the size of government, getting the government back under control, as opposed to having. I mean, we're probably hopefully not as bad as Washington, but where they talk about somebody sitting in office with literally nothing to do but to get a paycheck. But when we found $2.6 million in duplicated services in different agencies that we were able to cut out of this last budget.
Is that a function of an auditing committee, or?
Well, basically, it's without zero-based budgeting is going to help. There's no doubt about it. When you start with what you had and just you talk about how much you're going to increase it or what you're going to do different, and as your budgeting process, it allows for things to just continue on ad infinitum. So the zero-based budgeting helps.
And that's what happens in Washington.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now we look at actually setting a committee up and look at what are they doing? Where is this money going? There are some things, and we've got some good constitutional officers elected. Gary Black was the one, one of the last areas that for the Republicans to take over was the Department of Agriculture. And Commissioner Black, you know, he kind of was joking out at the Walton County meeting. He said, anybody needs any microfilm machines? I found 4 brand new ones not even out of the box. You know, they were still in microfilm, microfiche, paper, nothing computerized. You know, there's so many things that Gary's doing to bring them into the 21st century. But you know, still look at what are they doing? You know, and so. Yeah, we want those guys to have a chance to run their agencies, but at the same time, we're the ones having to say, here's how much money you get. We've gone from over $21 billion to $19 billion in real dollars reduction over the last several years. You know, we're down to when you adjust it for inflation and everything else, we're back down to $19.90 per capita spending in this state, which is it's a good step in the right direction, but we can still do better on where some of these dollars are going. And I think this bill to actually look at all these appointees and every dime that's being spent, and just helping them along the way, saying, wait a minute, this is because you're sitting there in your agency saying, I'm spending this money here is a good thing. Well, you don't maybe know that this agency over here is doing exactly the same thing. And that's where these committees would have the ability to look through this cross section of all agencies and appointees.
How do we get to a point where the mentality of the government manager, when he gets towards the end of the fiscal year, what's George's fiscal year end? Is it calendar year or is it in sometime in? Because I know the federal government is September 30th.
July 1 starts our new one.
July 1, and so I know with federal employees that coming around this time of year, late August into September, they have surpluses in some departments, and then they go around, they start asking everybody, what do you need? It's not like people are putting requests in going, hey, I need this, I need that, but they actually go around and they say, because we have a surplus of money, we have to spend it, or we're going to lose it. And how do we get the incentive built in to where they go, you know what, I've got an extra $1 million, and that we reward them for not spending it rather than maybe a percentage of what they save in their budget gets paid in bonuses. Maybe that's how they get their bonuses. That's performance-based bonuses rather than just built-in bonuses. There's got to be some incentive to change the mentality of the government manager.
Well, the zero-based budgeting helps change that, because now they're justifying what they're spending that money on. They did that because, like you said, if they didn't spend it, they lost it, because all of a sudden they wouldn't lose it the immediate year, but the year after that, all of a sudden it's going to show up, wait a minute, you didn't spend this $1 million that you had left over, so we need to knock that out and start from that number with what you're doing differently. So zero-based budgeting will help that. You know, we've got a lot of opportunities in how government is being held accountable, and again, that's where this Accountability Act, and look, you know, and that's just now a group of 7 legislators, both from the House and Senate, looking at where this money's going, and you find out these people that are doing this is where we start making changes. No, this is not about spending money just because you can, just because there was X amount of dollars appropriated. If you don't need it, you don't spend it. You know, I think one mistake people make from time to time is coming from a business area, business background. People say, I'm going to run government like a business. Well, no, I'm not. Business is about making a profit. We're not about making a profit in Gold Dome. Business is about maximizing revenue. We're about minimizing revenue and still getting the services we need. Two different things. We want to use sound business principles. How are we being fiscally responsible? Those fiscal responsible principles of business, but it's not a business to make a profit and maximize revenue at all. That's what we've got to get rid of, that mentality, and go back to, we want to minimize what we're doing, we want to do what's necessary, what we're required to do, and we want to let the people have their freedoms and individual liberties back at the state and federal level.
Is there a way to tie the state budget to a GDP for the state to see what, gee, we operate right now under a certain percentage of the GDP, and kind of use that as a barometer going forward to say, you know, we can't let any growth happen more than this percentage. It's not like we are federal government who in times of war has to go and spend all kinds of money, in print money and do whatever. We're a state, and we don't have that same responsibility, and so we have fixed cost. So we should be able to project and predict what our budgets are going to be, like a business in this way, for the next 5 or 10 years.
And we do, and having a balanced budget requirement. I mean, that's something that, you know, as much as I dislike the idea of doing constitutional amendments in Washington, that's one I'm afraid we're going to have to do to ever get those guys under control, because they've proven time again they cannot control themselves. Right. Here, where we have to have a balanced budget every year, we cannot spend more money than we're going to take in, and we're projecting that revenue out. You know, now we've had some.
Isn't that a loose term though, balanced budget? Because they're if you get big spenders in, and they pass taxes, they raise the ceiling, and they spend up to that amount, they're still balancing the budget. So
it is, and then we didn't have to do it in January when I was in March when I was down there this year, but 2 years prior to that. They got down in January in the middle of the fiscal year and realized revenues weren't as strong as we were projecting, and they had to do some more reductions. Unfortunately, one of the things we saw in those cases was education. That's one of the things I argued strongly against and campaigned against, that, you know, they had no way to make that up. Mm-hmm. You know, instead of building a road to nowhere, if it's on a safety issue, you know, that project can be put on hold. Our commitment to the education of the children in this state, this is what we gave to the school board, and they made their budgets in good faith. We need to live up to that and find a way to do it. So, yeah, you're right. That balanced budget can be a moving target, but it's still a requirement, and it's still a good thing that we got to work on. But we've got to focus on reducing the size of government, reducing spending.
Are there things that the state of Georgia does today that should be outsourced? Have you found anything that's an obvious thing to say, why are we even in this business?
No, I haven't, but I haven't looked at it, to be honest, as far as that. And I think when it comes to outsourcing, I think that is a good tool. You know, who does things well? If it's something government does well, you know, we can keep it. But if it's not, there's no reason you have a government agency that's spending twice the money to do something that some of these private companies do, right, day in, day out. And there's I'm sure there's a lot of opportunity, but just, you know, having gotten, you know, I got in for the last 8 days of the session and been campaigning again.
Well, I was going to say, you've been in this the third election in 1 year?
Third election, yeah.
Explain a little bit why. Some of the people might not know why you've been.
Lynn Walker was the state representative in District 107. He served us for 17 years. Lynn called me on December the 4th. They actually called me before that, telling me that the December 4th vote was coming on the congregational vote. Lynn's a pastor, took a job as a senior pastor at the Big Canoe Church, Big Canoe Chapel, I believe it's called, in Big Canoe, Georgia. And with that position, he'd be moving out of the district, and of course would have to resign his seat. The special election, his resignation was right at the end of December, and the special election has to be within between 30 and 60 days, so that was on February 7th. There was four of us total in that one, and then so we went to the runoff on March the 6th. And then after the runoff March 6th, after a couple of days, March 7th happened to be crossover day. So the day after the election itself, and knowing I was elected, just waiting for the certification and swearing in, my first day down there running around the Capitol on the floor was on crossover day, which was quite an interesting day to be your first day on the floor. But
so you really didn't have a chance to study all the legislation going on at the time?
You know, some of the things I was very interested in, even during the campaign with the online, I was able to keep up on. And yeah, I think it was 1, 2 o'clock in the morning every day of that, from the day I got elected, reading bills. We got down there on the last day, and the stack on our desk was like the New York City phone book and the Boston phone book combined, and you still didn't know which ones would actually be brought up. You know, I told people that the House voted on 73 different bills on the last day. You notice I didn't say I voted on 70. Right. There was just no way that there would be something come back from the Senate that they were going to agree to their change, which was something maybe as simple as a typo in a 40-page bill, and I'd get through about 3 pages and they're calling for the vote. Right. And you know,
So you decided at that point in time not to vote, and I think that's wise. There's going to have to be a little asterisk next to 2012 next to your name, because somewhere in the future they won't know that story, and they're going to say, well, you didn't vote on 90% of all the legislation in 2012 because it was the first day that you were elected.
There was one group that gave me they gave me an 80% conservative rating because I wasn't there to vote on enough bills. And I'm like, well, that's it's better than having no rating, but
I don't know. I think I'd rather say don't even count me for this year. Wait till next year. But anyway, one of the things that I think is very important, as this last primary just a couple of weeks is still on people's minds, is T-SPLOST. Now, we had 12 regions around the country that were formed. 13. In the state. Yeah, in the state.
12 regions. That's Hunger Games, isn't it? 12 regions?
Yeah, that's right. It's 12 Hunger Games. Well, and there is a connect to these regions and Hunger Games, if you've seen it. I think that movie was timely for this vote. But T-SPLOST basically proposed developing 13 different districts that were, in the end, autonomous to themselves. We wouldn't have a chance to vote on the people that would actually cast their votes to how to spend the dollars that would be raised by this 1 cent penny sales tax. And although there are elected officials from your local town and your local county that may or be appointed to that governing board, but it's an indirect representation, not a real. It's representation without taxation without representation is what the founding fathers threw the T in the Boston Harbor was all about in the first place. So appropriately named T-SPLOST basically was like the tax on tea from King George back then. But how do we now? 3 districts did vote for it.
3 districts in the state did pass, yes.
And mostly southern districts, I think they were.
I know 2 of them are in the south.
Maybe one somewhere else, but we know that, and we know that the advertising going on down there was, well, if you don't vote for this, the Savannah River can't be dug out. The port won't be built. The expansion of jobs, you're going to lose jobs, and I won't mention any names, but I know someone works for a contractor who contracts with the state, and they were telling all their employees, you're going to all lose your jobs if you don't vote for it. And I'm like, wait a minute, we don't have it and you're employed, and not having it means you're going to lose your jobs? Why can't we just have the DOT be a responsible government agency and doing the engineering and proposing the right roads and bridges and things that need to be repaired and built? And why can't MARTA get its own act together, and maybe there's one area that needs to be privatized? There are bus companies all over and rail companies all over the country that run privately and make a profit. Believe it or not, they make a profit.
Gwinnett County is a good example. They're paying. There's 2 separate bus companies. There's not only MARTA, but there's another one. And they're running the same routes with the same people, and they're both needing and getting assistance to stay in business because they can't make a profit. Well, if you privatized it, businessmen are smart enough to understand. If I run the exact same route the other bus does, I'm going to lose half my business. I'm going to do something different. And yeah, there's a lot of things we can do on transportation. Like T-SPLOST, we've got a. We actually have a majority caucus meeting, a Republican caucus meeting this Saturday, and I'm sure how or what we're going to do with that actual legislation that was passed, the T as they call it, back in, that was what, 2009 session, I believe, or 9-10 session of the General Assembly. Whether it repeal it, do something different.
Well, with an 80% plurality, I'd say people are saying they don't want it.
Right, and so.
And they don't even want it fixed. They want it torn out from its roots.
I'm sure there'll be some discussion around what do you do with the 3 that passed it, if anything. So, but I think that'll be some of the conversation we'll hear about Saturday. But transportation in Georgia, we've got some issues in transportation in Georgia. There's no doubt about it. You mentioned MARTA. This whole thing we call Atlanta traffic that we've created over the last 40 years is a mess. We know that. From the Gold Dome, I think we've got a responsibility to look at the next 30, 40-year transportation plan. And that includes how we're going to pay for it as it goes, whether in private, public partnerships, whatever's going to work best for the people. I believe we started in Savannah. We're deepening the port to bring in the bigger ships. And when we talk about transportation, you're going to talk about finished goods, raw materials, and people being moved in, around, and through this state. How are we going to do it? And we look at Caterpillar and Baxter, two big companies coming into this area. Walton County.
And they're going to be getting their stuff to the port.
That's right. Caterpillar, they're talking about, somebody told me 70% of everything they make it at Caterpillar plans to be exported right through the Port of Savannah.
Right.
You know, I've been here long enough. You know, first moved to Walton County back in 1989, and they were talking about the Northern Arc then. What would this transportation look like if we had a Northern Arc? What would Walton County, Rockdale County, this side of Atlanta look like if we had an interstate road from somewhere up around Brazelton on 85, crossing over 316, 20, hooking up to 75 somewhere south of McDonough.
441.
Yeah.
You know, connecting all the main arteries around the state.
What would it do for this side of the city? What would it do for people moving up to the northeast, or traveling to the northeast, or even down south? You know, so
I want to know what they were thinking when they merged 75 and 85 into 6 lanes going through the middle of Atlanta when they originally built it, instead of having one of them go around Atlanta.
Now, there's 2 other things that we could do real quickly on transportation. Number one is something I've been arguing about for a long time. Growing up on the farm, taking care of a bunch of show cattle, I pulled a cattle trailer, 60 foot from bumper to bumper from Sacramento, California to Baltimore, Maryland, and everything in between. When you come to a big city like Atlanta, first thing you'll see is those signs telling those trucks that, one, they got to get on 285, and number 2, then it's going to say they must use the right 2 lanes. Well, that's absolutely backwards. If I'm going to be a through truck, I'm going to put them on the left lane, get out of the car's way. If the cars are getting on and off, because I can tell you 95% of the time, if there's a truck and a car in a wreck, it's the car's fault. They've done something that the truck could not react to.
They're trying to squeeze in between those 2 trucks to take that exit or whatever.
That's right. So put my truck on the left lane and just let them boogie straight through town as quick as get them through.
I think that's a great idea.
Tulsa has actually done it.
I was in the trucking business 25 years, and I can tell you that
it makes sense. It's common
makes
sense. Just get the trucks out of the way. Then the second thing is, have you ever gone to Atlanta on one of these little minor holidays where the only people not working are federal government employees? What's the traffic like in Atlanta on those days? It tells you how many federal government employees are in the downtown area. They're tied to Washington, D.C. Yeah, they want to be near the Capitol, but we've got Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. I would think any place within an hour of Hartsfield-Jackson, because you've got to figure downtown Atlanta at least 45 minutes to get there.
So my wife does it. She's a federal employee. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours from Conyers to Claremont Road in North Druid Hills, and that's one way. And so we moved to Rockdale when Rockdale County was the least traveled area of the 4 corners of Atlanta, and now it's caught up. The traffic on I-20 is off.
If we could encourage some of those federal offices and institutions to be moved outside of Atlanta,
yes,
it would make a huge difference in the commute pattern.
There's a huge amount of people of the federal employees that live in the suburbs, that if they located the offices on the just outside the 285 Beltway, it would help the economy of like Wesley Chapel Road to 138 here, if they, or on the north side of 85, just a little further out than than Jimmy Carter Boulevard or whatever. So all those people are doing is clogging up. The other thing, federal employees, federal government in Washington has mandated that CDC do teleworking. And however, the bosses at CDC are not taking full advantage of it, because a lot of them are old school and they feel that if their employee's not there in front of them, they can't really manage it, makes them nervous or whatever. But if teleworking were implemented for those who are just really doing writing and clerical and they're having to do phone calls from home or receiving, we could free up 10% of the traffic. Mm-hmm. And what about, Tom, staggering hours, getting employers in stagger, just somebody starts at 7, somebody starts at 8, and somebody starts at 9, because you can travel in 30 minutes to downtown Atlanta from here between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
You know, and I think those are great ideas for employers to do that. Again, I would not be in favor of government mandate. I'm not.
I'm talking about mandating their own employees.
But I'm not. Yeah. Well, as far as government start times, absolutely. Yeah. But as far as government suggesting to ABC Corporation, you need to start at 8, and XYZ you start at 9. No, we don't want to go there. That's not.
Well, I think the point you're making is when the federal day off, how many less people there are on the road.
So we can do some things with government starting times and look at what they're doing.
Right.
I think there's a lot of things, and we're encourage them to locate outside the.
Isn't that a lot cheaper than building another 6-lane highway?
Absolutely, absolutely. As I've traveled around around the country, different jobs, when people talk about traffic, and I've explained to them, just look at 75 just north of 285 there around Marietta. It's what, 8 lanes in each direction. They think I'm confused. They think it's 8 lanes total. And I'll pull up Google Earth or something and show them all this concrete, and they're like,
and it's still jammed.
That's right. And I said, I'm sat there for 20 minutes and didn't move.
Right.
8 lanes heading north.
That's right. I worked in Marietta for a couple of years, and I would tell you, I had to try and get there early, and leave early. And if I couldn't leave early, I waited till 7 o'clock, then came home, because I'd get home about the same time anyway. It was awful. Let's talk a little bit about you personally. You're married, your wife Rosemary, and you've got 3 children, all in that great age of just out of college, just in college, and just about getting ready to go into college.
Well, so it's middle school. I've got a few years on her, but
it's going to go by fast.
I know it does. So the oldest one, Courtney, she just got married in June. Had to take a weekend off during the campaign. She got married in Kentucky, and she just graduated from University of Kentucky as well. So starting her master's work in social work this fall, I guess this week. And then Leslie's
is she going to be doing that also in Kentucky, or?
Her and her husband both, when they get out and finish their masters in social work, I think he's going to get. I don't know if he's going to get his masters in, but they want to join the Peace Corps.
Oh, really?
Do at least a couple of years in the Peace Corps. She did a practicum over in Ghana, Africa, one summer, and this summer, actually part of their honeymoon trip was over in Bosnia or someplace, and she had was doing a presentation about what all was going on in Africa, the group she worked with there. So she's got a true heart for that. As a social worker and helping people, and really what she wants to do. So I think, and I encourage her. I said, when you're young, that's when you run around and do the peace and everything.
World,
That's right. Sooner or later, the responsibilities and things start catching up.
It'll come fast, and then your heart goes, I should have done it when I was young.
I tell people all the time, I should have gone down to Key West and hung out with Jimmy Buffett on the beach for a couple of years. But I was too busy thinking I wanted to get back and get to work out of college and start doing all that stuff. But and then Leslie's down at Valdosta State. She's starting her 2nd year at Valdosta. Both of them graduated from Loganville High School. All of our kids have been in the public school system and done very well. And Leslie's actually a theater major. She does technical theater, lighting and sound is what she doesn't want to act.
Okay.
She wants to, but which is good because
we probably could use her expertise in this room.
Well, I learned those people actually get jobs and make money, and opposed to these actors that waitress and stuff all the time. So but she really enjoys it, and she did well her freshman year and earned the Hope Scholarship again. So that's great to have one in school getting Hope. I'm a graduate of the University of Kentucky. Kentucky actually has an alumni legacy program, so I didn't have to pay out-of-state tuition on her.
Oh, good.
Not all schools offer that, but the Hope's even better. So I'm happy to have one in Georgia system with the Hope.
Well, Valdosta's a great school. My youngest daughter went there for a year. my wife went there for her first year in college before she transferred to LSU, and says that she wished she had stayed at Valdosta. So in the new buildings that are down there, it's a phenomenal campus.
Neatest campus
Oh,
there.
man.
The architecture and the Spanish moss hanging
It's
from the
beautiful.
trees and everything. Yeah,
I told
it's-
Angie when we went and visited, I said, I don't know if you felt this way, but when you walk around there, you go, wait a minute, this is better for retired people than it is for kids. Kids don't know what they have.
That's
We would take full advantage of all that they have there. So, yeah, it's a great campus.
And then my youngest one, Peyton, she's middle schooler at Loganville Middle School. She's a cheerleader for the football team this year, 7th graders. So she's all excited about that, and does competition cheerleading for Future Extreme. And so
Good.
keeps us going.
Where do you attend church?
We attend church at the Church of the Grove. We were part of the group the 40 families that planted Church of the Grove, a positive church plant, not a split.
Where's it located?
It's located in Walnut Grove, Georgia. We meet at Walnut Grove High School. We don't have our own building yet. We've been in existence about 5 years now. My wife serves as the preschool ministry director, though
Okay.
she's wanting to give that up, you know, and allow somebody else to take it on. She's been doing it now for a lot of years, and she's also done some preschool teaching at Firm Foundations before that as well. So she says after so long of 3 or 4 year old kids, you're kind of ready to do something a little different. So, but it's a great experience. We say our mission at Church of the Grove is to reach those that are least likely to be in church. We have our gathering there at Walnut Grove High School. We've also started one now at Social Circle Middle School,
Okay.
and one in Rockdale, Romania, that Pat and Joy Harden lead. So we've got 3 campuses. We do the Sunday gathering. We didn't do the small groups in the home.
Just do a satellite feed, or
No, we don't do. We've done a couple of Skype things over just communicating with them, but they just launched that gathering on Sundays in Romania this year. We've had teams go over with different missionary groups
Great.
to work in Romania. My wife and daughter both have been to Romania as well.
well, that's great. Thanks for sharing all that, and I just want to thank you for coming in today. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to talk about before we close out? We've got about 5 more minutes to go.
I'll be real quick. 2 things. One, I think one of the most important pieces of legislation we'll be working on is banning the human-animal hybrids. This idea of taking human embryos and putting them in animal cells, where they put them in jellyfish cells to make glow-in-the-dark embryos, put them in cow cells, different things where the scientists believe since it's not 100% human, they can do any kind of research, and they want to on this living organism. I think that's something we're going to stand up and say that Frankenstein type science is not going to happen in Georgia anymore. I think that's something that we really need to get rid of here.
Just like the use of embryos for stem cell research proved that the conservatives were correct, that we had adult stem cells that proved to be the ones that are being used, that are having success, and there was no need to create a culture of abortion in order just to create a science so that we could resolve issues, medical issues for people. We already had the science, and we already had the answer and the solutions in the existing adult stem cells, and I just don't see how any moral nation can support this kind of mixing of. We're not talking about mixing human cells with human cells. We're talking about mixing animals. And I know there are some people that elevate animals above humans in this world. Sad to say that there are people that have that mentality. Well, but I think that's a dangerous, slippery slope. So
I agree.
I appreciate that that's on your agenda.
And then one thing that we're working on right now, and we'll be down in Atlanta at the end of this month. Washington's not the only one that has this idea of regulating around the General Assembly or Congress. We've seen this administration, cap and trade to cap and tax. Congress wouldn't pass it, so you see EPA trying to regulate a lot of that in the Obama administration. Well, in 2011, I believe it's House Bill 274, but don't quote me on the number off the top of my head. an environmental bill, and there was a lot of useless, burdensome, and extremely costly language about permitting and inspecting and engineering studies for inert landfills. We're talking about yard waste. We're talking about places you can dump your grass and your tree cuttings and recycling old concrete and asphalt and things that save money for businesses and do a good job of recycling, creating compost piles. So the General Assembly, rightfully so, took all that out and said, we don't need this. I got a call from 81 Recycling up on Highway 81 here in Walton County. EPD, in their infinite wisdom, is trying to put all this back in, and having looked.
They're trying to do it just by writing a rule rather than having the legislation.
Having a they're going to put the regulation in. You know, like anything, when I get a call, I always try to look into it, make you hear one side of it. And I talked to the guy at EPD, and his words were, "I'll send you the white pages I did to explain all this, because I did it for House Bill 274 before it was gutted by the General Assembly," which right away told me, okay, we're dealing with somebody that's literally feels comfortable enough to tell me, you all, the elected people's representatives said no, we're going to run right around you over the top of your head and put it into the regulation. And that meeting's coming up into this month, and we'll be down there, and I've talked to some other legislators. And
how do we get control of these bureaucrats that think that they write the laws?
We're walking right in there in this one and going to tell them straight up, if you really think you need to do this, go ahead, and come January we're going to fix it. And we also have the authority to make it where you can't make any regulations without our approval. You know, we can, if we have to, we'll tell them straight up. You want to put a regulation in, it's after you come up with all your meetings and your public hearings, and you say, here's what we want to do, and then you send it to us, and we're going to vote on every single one of them.
They almost beg for the situation where you have to write a bill that says you can't do this, 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 and this, rather than them reading the law that you've approved and saying, now we have to stay within the guidelines and the confines of the legislation. They think that if it's not mentioned, that gives them carte blanche to go ahead and just put it in place.
This guy told me without batting an eye, he said, yeah, all the permit for this recycling center would probably be around $100,000. I said, you don't think that's a little high to recycle grass and leaves and trees? No answer. You know, I said, well, then he came back and he said, well, they've had some issues. I said, what's that? Well, they've had steam releases. We're recycling green leafy material. Did you not go to high school chemistry class? He said, well, they've had some methane release. I said, okay, well, did you not go to high school chemistry class? Well, this is a byproduct that occurs in nature. Right. And yeah, okay, I put enough dirt on to make a pocket of methane that can become explosive. That's really safe. You know, I'm one that believes EPD should be held criminally liable for any time you have a fatality in one of those grain elevator explosions in the Midwest. And I know that's not something we maybe hear about as much here. But for people very quickly to understand, grain dust is something that's out in all the fields and all through the Midwest when they pick corn or beans or anything else. Right. Well, EPA has clamped down on the elevator so much it's afraid of a fugitive emission that this combustible dust, that, like you saw at the Imperial Sugar Refinery when it exploded, can occur right at harvest time. There's a higher moisture content as it's drying. Heat's a byproduct. It can reach the temperature of spontaneous combustion. With this combustible dust, it blows up. We kill people because we're afraid to let a little dust into the atmosphere from a grain elevator. Right. That's EPD or EPA doing that federally. This is EPD in Georgia doing the same thing, trying to run right around the elected body of the people, saying, we don't care what you think, we're going to do it anyway, and we're going to be down there at the end of this month telling them, don't do that. I'm
glad you guys are on top of that. They think that because they're the scientists, they're the experts, that the common legislator doesn't have the wherewithal to have common sense and know how to solve these issues. And there's got to be a balance of safety and also keeping people in business.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you we business over the years didn't do some bad things to the environment. We did. I mean, I remember when Cleveland, the lake caught on fire. The mistake by the lake, as they used to call it in the 70s, when it caught on fire, and you know, from the pollution and all the oil floating on it. Right. We've cleaned it up. We've done, you know, so there's been some good things done environmentally. We've done a much better job at increasing the consciousness of what are the effects of dumping this here or dumping that there, lining the regular landfills, to keep that
Even waste-to-energy facilities are a real, to me, the solution for the future.
But when you start talking about inert matter, and you're talking about, you know, your just your green grass that's being cut, your limbs and tree cuttings and things like that, these are a good thing. You shouldn't be paying the money to put that in a lined facility. It's not needed.
We used to call it compost.
They have they have compost piles. They take if you need a nice walk path, you know, they're recycling the asphalt that's been chewed up into the machine. Makes a great walk path. They've got a sample out there that for people. Even
old tires now, they cut them up into bits and pieces and rubber mulch, and there's a lot of uses for our products.
So we're getting better at it, but there's some things that still they just have gotten out of control, and that's what we're going to bring it in. So.
Well, thank you. It's been a great hour we spent together, and I appreciate your time here. And God be with you in this legislative session. I know that you look to Him for your counsel, and I've been at that State House where I've seen legislators just praying on the floor, and I'm proud of our legislators in this state, and is still in tune and in touch with people, and there are some that when they're not and the people still here do respond and replace them. So you're taking an empty seat that had been occupied for a long time, 17 years or so, by a good man, and you got some good shoes to fill. But in the conversations that we've had over the months, we've gotten to know each other a little bit. I just think you're going to be a great legislator, and just know that also, you know, when you're down there, if you need the help of the people, you can come back, give your message out. We'd be happy to have you anytime.
All right, and this, I know mostly in Rockdale County is where we are today, and like I was telling you earlier, I don't think we got to it on the film, but you know, we're part of the Rockdale delegation.
Yes.
If you're in Rockdale County and you're struggling with something, feel free to feel comfortable, give me a call.
Yeah, well, that's great. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me in.